kind, how do you go about digital? Is there a framework? Is there a roadmap? Is there a structure we can go about in creating digital communication? Now, I because in the morning sessions we saw multiple opportunities in omni-channel, okay, creating omni-channel experience, and we also saw in Joe's presentation the contribution from different element of your digital mix, contribute has a different impact on your sales. So, for example, the case he presented, I believe that search contributed the most and the social contributed the least. So Joe said no, that is just a one case, so it depends on the situation, depends on the brands, and depends on the category, depends on the market you operate. So now the challenge is, okay, how do, from a communication perspective, okay, how do you implement it? Okay, so Daniel will try to give us some indication, a possible path to go about it. And then we have Carlton. So Daniel is from Jaden, which has offices in Sydney and multiple places in Far East. They are not in Sri Lanka. Hopefully they will be here as well. And they do great work on digital and design as well. Carlton also comes from a communication background, but interesting thing is he now works for Hangama Digital Services, which is a WPP company. Probably some of Sri Lankan marketers may not have heard about, but this is they do some cutting edge, brilliant work on digital. So it's committed to digital communication. And I don't need to introduce Charu and Zoe. Thank you so much for joining us once again in this concluding session. So we have our moderator's chair for the session is Alina. I don't think, again, Alina doesn't require introduction. Alina is the youngest person to head JWT Colombo office. You are the youngest, correct?
Who knows?
Okay, all right. I know the history of JWT, but I don't know
But
your
I'm very
age.
young, very young.
But I don't know your
Very
age,
beautiful.
That's the problem. Okay, so, all right. So this is the final session. So this panel, this session is between, soon after this session is the most interesting part. Everybody is waiting for that. That's the, reception and cocktails. Okay, please welcome our speakers for the final session.
We'll just go. Right.
Thank you, Lakshman. I think my panel 4 team and I probably have one of the hardest jobs today. We've got to keep everyone awake and focused for the next hour and a half while drinks and food are coming. So we will try and keep it light and interesting. I've got a presentation full of cat videos, so I think it'll be okay. Everyone outside, cat videos, come on in. But can I get my presentation up, please? Thank you. The interesting thing is that I shouldn't actually be here. Not just today in Colombo in Sri Lanka. I mean, I actually shouldn't be in this industry. I shouldn't be in this space. This wasn't really my life's plan. As a young kid, I was always fairly into technology. So that's me dreaming about my iPhone when I was 1 year old. But I was never a traditional technology nerd. I wasn't very good at programming. I wasn't very good at design. I wasn't really good at, I didn't really enjoy studying. So when I finished high school, I took up a full-time job as a failed musician. And this is a legitimate career. 99% of people in the music industry are failed musicians. That means they make $0 from this profession. And I was very good at being a failed musician for about 6 or 7 years. So how I got here was a very, very interesting path. And it all started because I had to supplement my failed musician salary of 0 with something. So I took up a job at an ad agency because I thought that was the cool thing to do. It kind of matched my profile as a failed musician. And I did that for 6 or 7 years. Just really, it was my day job, before my band became very, very successful, which clearly, as you can see by me standing here, didn't really happen. So everything really for me started in 2006. MySpace was the trigger. So in this period of time in Australia, digital started really getting the notice of businesses. And by 2007, Facebook started getting some real penetration in the market. And at the time, nobody really knew what to do with these technologies. And my skill set as a trained failed musician meant that I actually knew how to use MySpace and Facebook, which meant I was way far ahead of every other marketer in Australia at the time. So when one of our brands came to us and said, who knows how to do Facebook, I put my hand up, and it kind of spiraled from there. And the interesting thing is you can see the social media timeline and how it's grown over the years, and it really captivated me. I realized I was much better at this than I was at being a failed musician, so I dedicated myself to this full time and really fell in love with the art of communicating and marketing using digital, not just social media, but digital in general. And I've had the opportunity to work with some great global brands in the last 10 to 12 years. And today I'm going to try and share with you some of the experiences and learnings that I've had from that. So the topic today that I'm going to talk about is the art of digital brand communications. And I've changed the title a little bit because communication is an art. And digital brand communication is absolutely an art form. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of the things that are very, very important to consider when building a strategy and executing in this space. So the word brand was spoken about a little bit today, but a lot of people don't really contextualize brand when it comes to digital. Usually the last conversation is how do we build our brand in digital? And the first conversation is communication, advertising, customer service. Everything else comes before brand. But it's interesting when you look at some of the definitions of brand. Jeff Bezos has a very, very good one. A brand for a company is like a reputation for a person. You earn the reputation by trying to do hard things well. Reputation is at the core of what a lot of brands are trying to do today, and digital is the perfect platform for branding. So the art of communication hasn't really changed. And I think a lot of people, and we were talking about it a little bit earlier, separate digital from traditional, and they say, well, I've got a different objective in digital, even though we're still trying to communicate and tell stories. So if you look at the history of marketing and how we've evolved, communication was always at the core of the way that we changed the strategies, platforms, tactics. From the era of information was purely about what product is it and how much does it cost, to the era of emotion led by TV and radio, right through the era of participation, which is kind of what we're evolving out of now, where the conversation, as a couple of my panelists and people today have mentioned, is owned by the consumer. They own the brand. And I think that's very, very interesting because the evolution of digital has been at the forefront of driving this change in the way that we as marketers and brands think. And so this quote was used a bit earlier today, but I don't think we spent a lot of time on it. I love this quote, which is, a brand is no longer what we tell the customer it is, it's what the customers tell each other it is. So the core of what we're trying to communicate is now this paradigm shift in the fact that our brand is not only built by our own communications. So the things that we say just form a very, very small piece of context around what the actual conversations of the market, of our customers, of the audience, are creating our brand to be, positioning our brand to be. So how do brands, I'm getting some skips. How do brands communicate in the digital age? It all started very, very early days with obviously websites and then search engines and SEO and SEM. But a lot of the time it's been very aggressive, very push. It's about how much information can we get out there. This is cheap, this is free. Why don't we just throw everything we have at it? Why don't we just take some of our TV ads and some of our print ads and dump it into digital? And even today, and I was just saying to my colleagues, I still get briefs, even in Australia and the US, that say, I need a Facebook page. That's not a brief, and that's not a strategy. Too many clients still say, I need a viral video. And when we as agencies and we as marketers get a brief like that, that really puts a box around the thinking that we are allowed to do and the framework of communication that we're trying to build. Because it seems like a lot of the times when you start talking about digital, people forget the basic principles of successful brand communications. It's not about the platform. And we talked a lot about customer centricity today, which I'm going to talk about again. But really, a successful brand finds that crossover between what people want and what the brand wants and what the brand can deliver, what the brand stands for. So most marketers today, even in the digital space, are struggling to understand what it actually is that people want, even though the data is there, the conversation is there. A lot of the things that we can take for free are there to give us a direction on this. And digital hasn't magically changed this. So when we think about digital, and today's session and today's conversation has been built around digital, a lot of the principles that for 50 and channels haven't changed at all. And we were just talking about some of the people that have transitioned out of traditional advertising, traditional communications into digital, and have been very, very good at finding ways to tell stories and making storytelling the advertising. But actually fuel a lot of those ideas that we put into the marketplace. So listening for insights and opportunities is actually how we should start all of the ideation and all of the creativity that we're trying to develop into our storytelling, because the customers, the market, the audience are already telling us what they want. They're engaging with our competitors, they're engaging with each other, and they're already saying and crying out for opportunities to give them more value, to give them more input, to give them more engagement. So insights really will only have that value if we have a strategy in place to take advantage of them. And these don't work in silos. I think it's very, very important that when we go through this process, that we connect all of the pieces of the puzzle and don't skip ahead to, well, I just want to see what my Facebook post looks like, and I just want to see how pretty my website looks, and I need a responsive website. That's great, but that's a little bit further down the line. So I think it's important that we back up a little bit. And when we think about being customer-centric, we've talked about that a lot, and I think a few people have mentioned the importance of the customer journey. It is absolutely critical in digital to really think about the customer journey and the way that they're interacting with us, because if we start thinking about the customer journey and not the channel, we will see the strategies and tactics take place a lot clearer and a lot easier. Because Facebook is not a part of the customer journey as a channel, it's a part of a customer journey as an experience. And once we understand where Facebook lives in the experiential part of the customer journey, it'll be a lot clearer what we do with it. So the 4 phases that we look at, and there's a lot of different interpretations of this, are awareness, research and consideration, action, and retention and loyalty. And then what we try to do is we try to map all of the different touch points, and there's multiple different touch points which are not linear, across all of those phases. And they're both traditional and digital, and this is a linear representation, it's not linear. Because this will help us understand what are the different experiences that our customers come in and out of the journey with us through, and how can we now start to create communication pieces and stories and content and experiences around that customer journey. So the content strategy can only start to take shape once we have gone through this process of identifying our brand and business objectives, looking at our audience, segmenting it, getting the insights out of it, and understanding the customer journey and the different touch points across the customer journey that we need to activate. If we are jumping ahead and going straight to the content or straight to the ad or straight to the viral video, we are missing a huge piece of the understanding and a huge piece of the strategy, and we're going to find that it's not effective. A lot of people come to the agencies, and I think we've probably all experienced it, saying, I've invested a lot of money in my website, my Facebook page, my YouTube channel. I don't see any impact on my business. But then when you ask the questions of what impact were you expecting on your business and how are you measuring it, it starts to unravel that none of this has been thought through. So it's very important that we consider this as we work through. And when we think about digital as a communication channel, if we go back to the sort of basics of communication and look at the context that we've got up on screen. So communication is basically describing the act of establishing a shared understanding or emotion. So we are not going to do this by buying a huge amount of display ads that just say the same thing over and over again. We are not going to do this by having 5 million likes on our Facebook page. Those numbers are not what's going to drive this shared understanding or emotion that we're trying to create for our brand. So the role of brand communication is basically linking what people currently think and feel with what we would like them to think and feel, and building this connection over time. This is not instant. Digital is not a silver bullet that gives us an instant impact. A lot of traditional businesses have moved into e-commerce, and we've had experience with this. And they've said, my product is the number one in our category on the shelf. So I'm just going to open up an e-commerce store, and naturally people are going to buy from me. I'm going to whack up ads everywhere over the internet saying, click here to buy, and people are just going to buy. It doesn't work. The digital e-commerce channel needs to have a journey and a connection point that's not completely direct. Not click on my ad and buy my product straight away because you do it at the supermarket. There is an experiential layer. There is an engagement layer. There is a trust layer that's very, very important. So really, when we look at the art of digital brand communication and communication on digital platforms, it's about creating stories and telling stories. And storytelling is not a simple task. It is an art form. And I don't say that just because I run an agency. It is very, very difficult to create stories in a very competitive, flooded market where there are multiple people trying to tell the same story and jump out. Not impossible, but difficult. And I think it's important to understand it's difficult. And if you did understand that, then we wouldn't be getting briefs like, we want a viral video, because it's not as simple as that. That's a very simplistic view of a channel and a piece of communication. So what we try to do is we try to create stories that influence hearts and minds. Advertising and marketing works best when it's connected to an emotion, when it's connected to an emotional hook. We know that this is not new. I'm not saying something that we're not aware of. But a lot of people forget this when it comes to digital. We think, why don't we just pile as much of the content as we can and something will connect? It's like throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks. And that's not the right approach. So I want to show you a couple of examples of brands that have done this successfully and what it means to create stories that influence hearts and minds through the digital platforms. So the first example is Oreo, and Oreo do this very, very well. Some of you have probably seen a couple of examples. And this was a very interesting story that they created around the new product, which was the Oreo Mini. So I'll play you the video and then I'll show you another example of that.
On a long stretch of road that starts here and ends there sits a store half the size of a truck, plus it's spare. Mel's Mini Mini Mart is the name on the store. By far the most mini of any mini before. That may explain why, day after day, not one man, woman, or child would look Minnie's way. Not a soul ever stopped in for donuts or coffee or newspapers, batteries, bananas, or toffee, or barbecue jerky or cheese shaped like strings. Good thing, because Mel's Mart sold none of those things. What good, they all thought, would a mini mart be to an oversized trucker or family of 3, plus 4 friends and their cat? Not much good. Imagine that. Then one day it happened without any warning. A van stopped by Mel's early one morning. A father, a mom, and 2 pint-sized girls with the shiniest, silkiest, bounciest curls. What the family discovered that others had not was the secret inside this mini mart spot. See, Mel sold one thing, a treat, oh so teeny, the smallest of Oreos, Oreo Minis. Oreo Minis are just what you'd think. They're like big Oreos that decided to shrink. And just to make sure you don't misunderstand, you can tell that they're minis if there's lots in one hand. So they filled up their van right up to the border, and the dad just so happened to be a reporter. In a flash, the news spread about minis worldwide. Now everyone knows how much good is inside. The moral remains. It's not how you're built, but what's deep inside that makes us all wonder-filled.
So that's the art of storytelling. And what Oreo does very well is they don't just stop at the story. And what digital really allows us to do is to now start to build out layers upon layers of engagement off the back of this very, very beautifully crafted story that they've created. And what they were able to do is create a sense of excitement around the product launch, which was purely driven through a digital channel. And this video was just one of the initial communication pieces, which then followed up with a huge amount of content, specifically targeting really, really loyal, powerful advocates of the Oreo brand. So they created a sampling, and a select 500 influencers who have been engaging with Oreo throughout the years were given the opportunity to get the first sample of the Oreo Mini. And they created lots and lots of content like this, micro content for Instagram, for Facebook, for YouTube, of the unboxing. And then those stories started layering through all the different social channels and all the different assets that Oreo was managing and maintaining at the time. The brief for this wasn't a viral video. It wasn't create a Facebook page or make us a website. The brief was to create a sense of emotion and a story around a new product, the Oreo Mini, and they did a fantastic job doing that. So you really want to be looking at stories that engage. Information is important, but engagement is even more important. How do we create that next level of connection and engagement? And I want to show you another example that did a very, very good job of this in Singapore.
Once in a while, something comes along that changes the way we live. A device so simple and intuitive, using it feels almost familiar. Introducing the 2015 IKEA catalog. It's not a digital book or an ebook. It's a book. The first thing to note is no cables, not even a power cable. The 2015 IKEA catalog comes fully charged and the battery life is eternal. The interface is 7.5 by 8 inches, but can expand to 15 by 8 inches. The navigation is based on tactile touch technology that you can actually feel. Content comes pre-installed via 328 high-definition pages of inspiring and furnishing ideas. To start browsing, simply touch and drag. Right to left to move forwards, left to right to move backwards. Notice something else? That's right, no lag. Each crystal clear page loads instantaneously, no matter how fast you scroll. If you want to get a quick overview, just hold it in the palm of your hand and using just your thumb, speed browse the content. If you find something you want to save for later, you can simply bookmark it. And even if you close the application, you can easily find the bookmark again. Amazing. What about multiple users? For that, we've introduced a simple color coding system to avoid confusion. If you want to share a particularly inspiring item, you literally share it. Another special feature is password protection, which is voice activated. Excuse me, that's mine. At IKEA, we feel that technology this life enhancing should be in the hands of everyone. So the 2015 IKEA catalog is free. You can download one from your mailbox, the one you open with the key. If it's not there, try refresh the next day. Or you can upload yourself to the IKEA store and find one there. Experience the power of a book.
So this is incredibly powerful brand communication, and the brief here was to create excitement around a physical product, a catalog, that comes out regularly and everybody's very comfortable with an IKEA catalog. And this is a very, very simple way of telling the story using digital and creating that sense of emotion, that sense of engagement, that sense of excitement. It's a parody on Apple. It's pretty funny. It's well executed. And it wasn't a hugely expensive campaign to do. This was something I was lucky enough to be involved with. So when approached in the right way, there's a real opportunity to create that sense of excitement. This was a very successful campaign. So it reached over 18 million people. This was done out of Singapore. It was done by IKEA Singapore, but it really took over globally. And it wasn't because anybody set out to make a video that was viral. It was because we set out to tell a story and to engage the consumer around something that they found interesting and engaging. Now, a lot of you are thinking, well, that's great. Oreo and IKEA are very sexy brands. This is not only for sexy brands. How many of you guys are in B2B? Hands up. B2B? Not that many, a few. Okay. We can communicate exciting, interesting, engaging ideas for just about any product in any industry. We just need a little bit of creativity. I'm going to show you a great example of this.
How many ways can a man tell his sweetheart, I love you? Until now, the answer was 3. He could buy her expensive diamonds. He could take her on a tropical vacation. Or he could carve his initials into a tree, then carve a heart, and then carve her initials. But now, he can give her the ultimate expression of his everlasting affection. The Cisco ASR 9000. Because nothing says forever like up to 6.4 terabits per second. Nothing says commitment like up to 400 Gbps per slot. And nothing says I love you like 6 times the mobile backhaul capacity. How many ways can a man say I love you? The answer is 4. The Cisco ASR 9000.
So that wasn't expensive to do. I hope no one from Cisco is here, but Cisco is not a typically sexy brand, and you don't expect this type of communication from them, but they're using a platform like YouTube to create a huge amount of stories. So they've built a community on YouTube, and this is just one example. Not every video is funny, not every video pokes fun, but they are able to connect with their target audience and their demographic through multiple different ways of telling stories using the different platforms available to them. So how do we deliver value? How do we create stories that deliver value to the consumers and to the users that we have? There are 4 different types of value, and there's a couple of different ways to look at this, but when we create stories, we look at a few pillars: information, education, entertainment, and distraction. How do we find that space during one of those cycles, whether they're searching for information, whether they're trying to educate themselves on a product or a category or a service, whether we're just trying to entertain the audience, or whether they just need to escape and it's just a distraction for them. But these should be at the core of the conversations that we're trying to create, the engagements that we're trying to start, and the stories that we're trying to create. So once we've actually created the stories and created the content, then it comes to dissemination or content seeding. And this is very, very important. We had some interesting conversations today about advertising and programmatic advertising. But really, the media, the digital media, is a channel for engagement. It's a channel for seeding content and for dissemination. It's not about the advertising and how we do it. That's a technical aspect that's very, very important. There's a huge amount of people and organizations that are very, very good at it. But it's about how we are trying to connect with the consumers at what stage of their journey and what we're trying to share with them. So we only start to think about the channels once we get to the space of disseminating the content and sharing the stories that we're trying to create. At that point, we will know what the right channels are. Is it Facebook? Is it Twitter? Is it Instagram? Is it Snapchat? Is it YouTube? Once we have our objectives, our strategy, once we know the audience, once we create the stories and conceptualize the stories that we're trying to tell, only then do we need to look at the channels. And a lot of the time, and I know for a fact even in Sri Lanka, we're doing this backwards. We are starting here and we're working backwards to say, okay, well, what's the content that we're going to create? And then who is the audience and how are we going to reach them, rather than completely reversing that cycle. So when we're thinking about communication, you've got to understand that there is so much noise in the market. There's been a couple of other interesting slides that were shown today, but you can see the amount of content shock that we are under. We're always on our platform. Someone showed a slide, I think it was 82 or 83 different micro interactions with our mobile and tablet devices. And every single time we're consuming content, and every time we're scrolling through lots and lots of content to make our choice. So how do we stand out? So the best way to stand out is to be as personalized, as targeted as possible to our consumers on the channel where they want to engage with us at the right time. And so I think the best way to do that is to find the right blend between what is a very traditional direct advertising model online, what was a very effective earned model online where there was a lot more ability to reach people organically. That a lot of that has disappeared, and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram are becoming very much paid advertising platforms. But that's very important that we think about it strategically rather than technically. And there was someone else that mentioned this, I think, during the programmatic session. So we must change our focus when it comes to the seeding of content. So there's the outcomes, which is an audience-oriented model that focuses on what people think and feel, and what we want them to think and feel, versus the outputs, which is a brand-oriented model that focuses on the content and so the media that we will use to disseminate that content. And I think that's very, very important. So when we're briefing and when we're looking at our strategies to reach as many of our target audiences as we possibly can, it's not about which channels we spend the most amount of money on. It's about what is the right time and the right place to connect with that particular person that we're trying to reach in the most engaging way. That's where we will start to find success. So an interesting way of looking at it is that the activities and experiences that bring our strategy to life in the most engaging and persuasive ways for the right people, in the right places, at the right times. So there's a few layers to this, and it's very, very important that we consider all of them. So the experiences are very important because it's not about the technology and the platform, it's about the experience that we're creating for our customers on those platforms. And we need to do it in engaging, persuasive, exciting, emotional ways for the right people in the right place at the right time. So there was a question earlier on the screen saying, is it the right time to utilize YouTube in Sri Lanka? The right time is when your audience is spending time on that channel and they are engaging there because they are telling you, I'm here, this is where I want to be communicated to. This is where I want to be served video content. This is where I want to research. So the answers to a lot of the strategic questions are already there. The audience is giving us those answers as we speak. Media is just the messenger, right? And that's very important to understand. Context in advertising is critical, and context in digital advertising is often overlooked. So the frustration that people feel when they're sitting on Facebook and they're looking at photos of their sister's babies and the food that their mum had the day before, and right in the middle of it is a very, very obtrusive ad for something that's completely left field, there's a frustration there. There's an experience that sort of says, well, this brand is not thinking about me. They're walking into the wrong room and telling me the wrong thing at the wrong time. That context is critical. Now, we don't have a lot of time to spend on it today, but that's just something to think about. So there's also a new concept of frequency. So a lot of you that have had a lot of experience in traditional marketing know that there is a number of times that a certain message needs to be seen, heard, read before it is actually embedded into a person's consciousness and memory. But with digital, it's very, very different. So there's repetitive interruptions, which is actually the opposite of beneficial. So if you just keep on spamming people with the same banner ad, with the same Facebook ad, if people are scrolling through their feed and they see the same piece of content time and time again, they're just going to block it and it's going to lead to frustration. So what is really important is disruptive iterations. If you think about that journey that we looked at before, how do we keep evolving the story to show a different aspect of the message, a different iteration of the story every single time? Retargeting is very clever. I think a lot of people have seen ads that are retargeting them after they've visited a website, but if it's just the same old ad that's retargeting you, that will also lead to frustration. That's not going to achieve the purpose. So I think what is very important is that we analyze and optimize all of the content that we create, all of the media that we buy on a daily and a weekly basis. So as you're marketing, as you're building a brand, as you're communicating, looking at a report once a month and saying, how did this perform? How many people did I reach? How many clicks did I get? That's not enough. We have the opportunity in real time, daily and weekly at the very least, to change our strategy, to change the way that we do things, to change pieces of content, to say, this story is not connecting with this audience. This medium is not working for us as a dissemination medium, and we can change that. So that ability to analyze and optimize is often underlooked. And I think that's something that a lot of focus needs to be put on. So as we evolve in the way that we build our businesses through the digital platform, and a lot of people here today are here because they want to understand how do we transform our organizations into digital businesses. Right now we're talking specifically about the art of brand communication in digital channels. We've got to continue evolving, not just with the technology, but with our customers. So 10 years ago, nobody could imagine why somebody would want to download an app that created content that disappeared after 10 seconds. That was a concept that just didn't exist. But our audience today, especially the young audience, is saying Snapchat is the #1 fastest growing platform out of all the social platforms today. Why? What is the context of that? We need to ask ourselves, why is that the way that they want to communicate? And then how do we also learn to communicate our brand, our products, our services into those channels? It's not a matter of, this is where the audience is, let's just put our message into that channel. The context, the emotional attachment, the need, the desire is very, very important. So we have the technology. And I always go back to this because until we as marketers and we as business owners stop thinking about the technology itself and start thinking about the objectives of our brand, our business, and the needs and desires of our audience, consumers, and customers, we're going to keep stuttering along the way and making mistakes. So the technology is there, the data is there, there's a huge amount of people in the industry that know how to do this stuff. But I think what is very important is that we need to invest time and resources to make it work for our brand. Two critical elements to digital that are very often misunderstood is the amount of time that it takes to be successful and the amount of resources required to make it happen. So a lot of people think, well, digital is cheap, social media is free. If we don't have a lot of budget, let's just put it on Facebook because, we can spend $5 on Facebook. But that's not an effective, and that's not the way that we will actually succeed at engaging with our audience. The right way to succeed is to go back to the basics, understand the objectives, build a very, very thorough strategy, and from there start to go through all of the steps that we talked about, from understanding the audience to the customer journey to creating the stories, the emotional hooks, and then disseminating them and optimizing and analyzing that content in order to do that. And that's going to be a long-term process. Digital is what I call a forever investment. So you can't have a budget for the next year and see how digital goes. Digital is a commitment forever. It's not going away. Once you start communicating with your audience in that channel, you need to be prepared to be there for life. And I think once we start thinking that way, we will be successful, because as a channel for communication, Digital is one of the most powerful things we have at our disposal. It is not the silver bullet, it's not the only thing we should do, but to be successful, we need to go back to the basics, go through all the right steps, and really look at communicating in an engaging and effective way. So that's it from me today. Thank you very much, and we'll chat more in the panel.
Count and go.
Research partner.
Technology is changing the way people interact with each other and how they consume content, creating greater complexity, which can appear as a challenge, but we believe it's an opportunity. We have looked at consumers' behavior on and offline in 50 markets around the world. We've made sense of it all to help you make better decisions by understanding your consumers, the role technology has, and how the growing digital ecosystem has impacted the media landscape. When, why, and who engage with brands, what content matters most, and how connected across markets, categories, and consumer segments the path to purchase is. Connected Life from TNS helps you deliver your marketing goals, target more precisely, and meet consumers' needs. Connected Life from TNS.
Corporate communication partner.
Storyline, connecting the dots.
PR partner. Edfactors PR. Endorsed by.
Videos, so it'll keep you all awake. And there's just a few, probably about 75% of it is videos. So that's something that you guys have got to look forward to. Okay, the first point is, if your brand is innovating, so should your marketing. I think every brand personnel over here would think that their brand is an innovating brand. It's constantly innovating. It's coming up with new ways of connecting with consumers, or the product ingredients are getting a lot more better. If that's happening, so should your marketing. Because if your marketing is not moving with the same pace, you're going to be left behind. And that is pertinent for just not digital, but also traditional media. So if you're doing billboards, you've got to innovate on billboards. If you're doing print, you've got to innovate on print. The good part is that digital is essentially the enabler of innovation. And I've got two examples over here which will actually give you all a perspective of what I'm speaking about. The first one is about, actually both of them are digital products. One is on Xbox, and the other one is a collaborative one. The first one is getting the experience from a digital framework into the real world and giving everyone an experience of it. And the second one is trying to get people to a destination in an innovative manner and using a collaborative effort with a digital entity. So now the digital entities actually come on ground also. So without further ado, and I don't want to actually talk too much on this, you all will get a sense of it. So, sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Survival Billboard.
Pretty nervous.
I'm ready.
The pain is only temporary. Glory lasts forever.
You have the power. You can vote on survivalbillboard.com. And you voted for snow. This is the start of the true endurance test.
I'm getting so angry at this rain!
Mission
sadistic, but I like it.
Let us know what you're thinking. Keep chatting to us on Twitch.
They will be suffering from genuine fatigue at this point.
I underestimated the challenge. That's it. I'm done.
Goodness knows how they're managing it.
I'm gonna call it quits here.
They have been up there for an incredible amount of time. Our contestants have been through the elements.
So who has 8 minutes of dwell time on a billboard? I don't think anyone has ever done that. And I think the good part about this campaign was they didn't choose a medium. They kind of integrated everything together. So they had mobile, they had online, there was live streaming, there was a physical billboard, they had content generated out of it. So everything was pretty much used over seamlessly. So again, it's the idea which was there, and then afterwards the mediums or the means of communication was actually then thought about post that. Here's the second one.
The Art Institute of Chicago is now launching an interactive experience with the help of Airbnb.
You can live like Vincent van Gogh, but you get to keep your ears.
But if seeing simply isn't enough, you can also spend the night.
It's like jumping into a painting.
It is, look.
Van Gogh's 1888 bedroom painting was recreated and made available to everyone on Airbnb. The perfect platform to immerse yourself into the life of your host.
It's already sold out for this month, but there's always next month.
Good luck scoring a night in that room.
The first block of nights sold out in 5 minutes, and the guests who got in were thrilled. Within 1 week, this story was covered in over 100 countries. The room not only let people inside Van Gogh's art, it also told the world that Van Gogh's bedrooms had come to the Art Institute of Chicago. As thousands of people let themselves into Van Gogh's bedroom.
Simple idea, brilliantly executed. I think the fact that they managed to get Airbnb onto this, I think that was also another work of art, if you can call it so. The next one is you need to be relatable, very clearly. I think this is another manifestation of the quote which has been going around. Even Daniel actually presented that quote. But marketing has moved from the hands of brands into the hands of the consumers. Let's face it, I don't think no brand is actually has control over where their brand's going to go. It's completely in the hands of the consumers. And if you're not relating to that consumer, chances are you'll be lost for good. And here's another example of how a nice piece of guerrilla marketing pretty much made it all the way into everyone's hearts, including competitors' hearts also.
Story you guys have been waiting for. I don't know if you saw this.
Yes.
This is the New York Times today. There was an ad that was taken out by Burger King.
To McDonald's when Burger King asks McDonald's to join forces
To create the ultimate burger.
The McWhopper.
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 Becky Hooper.
McWhopper.
Proceeds would benefit the nonprofit called Peace One Day.
The letter invited readers to McWhopper.com, a multilingual microsite and a hub for consumers and media to source and share a variety of campaign assets. A media kit in disguise.
Corporate activation on this scale creates mass awareness.
We designed a proposed pop-up restaurant, the packaging, even the staff uniforms.
Social media is dining out on McWhopper. It's everywhere.
And you gotta love this. Burger King has extended the olive branch in McD's own backyard.
Sadly, McDonald's CEO nixed the idea.
We love the intention, but think our two brands could do something bigger to make a difference. P.S. A simple phone call will do next time.
What an
Are they stupid? McDonald's!
But everyone else said yes. Inspired by our online burger build film, the DIY McWhopper was born.
And if you're looking to make the McWhopper a reality, you'll just have to take matters into your own hands. To date, thousands of do-it-yourself McWhoppers have been created and shared on social media.
Why isn't this a real thing?
This is the first time I've ever eaten a burger for world peace. I mostly just eat them because I'm hungry.
Meanwhile, 4 other restaurant chains raised their hands for peace.
They combined a whole bunch of different amazing sandwiches to make one super amazing sandwich.
You got big major corporations doing it. Why not small people? We can do the same thing, you know?
Peace out. Peace out.
So this was genius. I think either which ways Burger King would have won, whether they had to say yes or no. World peace. Who doesn't actually want to eat a burger for world peace? You know, and I think this was one of the things which actually, they just pinpointed a certain thing and they said, okay, we'll actually go ahead and do that. And that's what everyone actually relates with. Let's talk to the consumers. Consumers ended up loving it. Small brands came on board because McDonald's said no. Obviously, McDonald's was going to say no. It's obviously, they're not going to actually tie up with their biggest competitor. But it just worked out just brilliantly for them, the kind of content which they ended up generating from it. I remember there was another campaign which was done a while ago, or rather not a while ago, just about 6 odd months ago, on beer. So the consumption of beer was actually dropping down in Australia, and I failed to remember the brand, but what the brand did was they created petroleum out of the byproduct of creation of beer. And their proposition ended up being, save the planet, drink more beer, you know? And it was just brilliant. So they had commercials which went out where a guy is leaving his house and his wife tells him, where are you going? And he turns around in a very Superman-ish kind of way and says, I'm going to save the world, you know? So I think it's stuff like that. You know, these are the kind of things which, so if you put your ear to digital and you actually listen, you'll come to know exactly what your consumers want and what's relatable for them also. The next bit is be real. Everyone's got to stand for something. Everyone hates a frivolous brand. If you don't stand for anything, consumers are not going to stand with you, you know. The last example, they wanted world peace, right? They stood for something, and everyone stood with them. So I think you need to actually stand for a certain bit of things and give a full backing against it. Meaning, like, I think if a brand stands for a specific thing, back it 100% and tell the consumers that this is what I stand for. And morally, you will go up in their eyes also. So here's a nice example of that. I think it was an opportunistic one, but I think it was the right move also for the brand. And this was coming out of India.
former flagship of the Indian Navy, our first aircraft carrier, the legendary INS Vikrant, was hauled to a breaking yard where she's being ripped apart and reduced to scrap. Do we, as a nation, pay lip service to the memory of our war vets?
Vikrant earned its real fame in 1971 in the war.
Vikrant played a very crucial role in India's victory against Pakistan, which led to the birth of a new nation called Bangladesh.
Vikrant, in one word, mother. Floating airfield, floating city, powerful weapon.
Pride of our nation. She was a national hero.
My first reaction on Vikrant's being scrapped was of dismay.
I was very sad, very sad.
Protests in front of Lion Gate against the Navy to move the vessel to a ship-breaking yard.
To send a ship to the scrap yard is almost like condemning a human being to execution.
The country could have afforded to have maintained her.
Bajaj bought the scrap metal, refined it, and created V.
Vikrant has actually come back.
Now, India can ride with pride.
There cannot be a better tribute.
I've never seen people inquiring about a product without seeing it.
I can own a piece of history now.
So now, again, this is just a simple idea. It might be opportunistic, but I think it's the right move also. It generated such a lot of noise before launch that the pre-orders were off the charts. People saw the bike, the design of the bike, but just owning a piece of history, you know, that was the proposition for everyone. They wanted to stand behind the nation's pride of sorts. So Bajaj, in turn, became the nation's pride. So it was a brilliant move also by the brand. The next one is be smart. You know, I think we've heard n number of presentations on data and the science behind it and all that jazz. But at the end of the day, you've got to actually figure out what that information entails to you. How do you take that information and make something out of it? How do you take data and make your brand better, not only your marketing, because data can actually help you get your brand to another level only altogether. You know, you can actually take likes, dislikes, intent, all of that, you know, and then apply it to your brand also to make it a better brand. I'm going to show you an example of an extreme end of data. Okay, how people actually took data and created something which was unthinkable. You know, it's a little bit of a long video, but I think it's interesting enough.
One of his great achievements, one of Rembrandt's great achievements, was to portray human emotions in a much more convincing way than artists had before him, and in many ways for all time.
At ING, we believe in the power of innovation, what it can mean to people. We want to bring this innovative spirit to our sponsorship of Dutch art and culture. We knew that for this challenge, we needed to team up with experts from various fields to make this come to life.
We're using a lot of data to improve business life. But we haven't been using data that much in a way that touches the human soul. You could say that we use technology and data like Rembrandt used his paints and his brushes to create something new.
The first step was to study the works of Rembrandt in order to create an extensive database. We gathered the data from his collection of paintings from many different sources. including 3D scans and upscale images using a deep learning algorithm. Because a significant percentage of Rembrandt paintings were portraits, we analyzed the demography of the faces in these paintings, looking at factors like gender, age, and head direction. The data led us to the conclusion that the subject should be a portrait of a Caucasian male with facial hair between 30 and 40 years old, in dark clothing with a collar, wearing a hat, and facing to the right. From there, we started to extract features only with faces that were related to that specific profile.
And we had to create a whole painting from just data. And we used statistical analysis and various algorithms to extract the features that make Rembrandt Rembrandt.
We took parts of the face and we started to compare them. And then, based on this, we're able to create a typical Rembrandt eye or nose or mouth or ear. After generating the features, we were focusing on the face proportions. We used an algorithm that can detect over 60 points in a painting. We were able to align the faces and to estimate the distance between the eyes, the nose, and the mouth and the ears.
A painting is not a 2D picture. It's 3D. You can see the canvas, you can see the brushes, and that's what makes the painting come alive. A hive map is essential to make the painting a painting.
We incorporated the height map into the painting and printed on a 3D printer that uses a special paint-based UV ink. It printed many layers, one on top of the other, which resulted in the height and texture of the final painting.
It's sometimes a magical moment to see a painting for the first time. Even if it's computer generated, for me it is something special. I would have believed if I saw it in a museum that it would have been a real Rembrandt, just one I haven't seen before.
It will be interesting to see Rembrandt looking at it. He will be happy that there are people trying to understand him and trying to create something out of that. So I think he will be happy.
The next Rembrandt makes you think about where innovation can take us. What's next?
So, can you imagine the amount of data which went into something like this? It's a long-term execution of something like this, but now you know the extreme end of what is possible in data. So you can actually work backwards now with this. And the last bit, which I think is probably one of the most important bits, is actually both for agency as well as brand. The most intimidating thing a brand can do is trust its agency. You know, you need to be brave. You need to take that first step. You're not going to actually go ahead and create something beautiful or create something path-breaking if you're not going to be brave about it. You need to take that first step. The same goes for the agencies. If you have an idea which is powerful enough and you want to back it 100%, you need to go ahead and push all your might behind it and sell it with all you've got, you know. So being brave is probably one of the most important points of all of these. You need to actually take the plunge in doing that. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples and I'm going to end over there. But I was fascinated by these two examples because I was just wondering how the agency went and presented this idea to the brand, meaning how the hell did they manage to do that? And I was surprised by the bravery of the client that accepted the idea in the format that it was. So anyway, these are the two ones.
The concept was we would make a film that wouldn't be seen for 100 years.
In 2015, as a tribute to Louis-Treize Cognac, that takes 4 generations of cellar masters over 100 years to craft, we shot a movie written by John Malkovich and directed by Robert Rodriguez that won't be released before 2115. Louis Trez presents 100 Years, the movie you will never see. This movie was launched with a billboard on Sunset Boulevard, backstage photos on social media, an official IMDb page, a mysterious making of.
I've never done anything like this, and I was intrigued by the concept of working on a film that nobody would ever see, in my lifetime.
3 teasers.
The notion inherent in this is for us to try and imagine what the world will be like in 100 years.
Pretty much like any highly anticipated theatrical release, except for one small detail, the release date, November 2115. So our grand premiere was replaced by a grand non-premiere, where all of Hollywood was invited to not see the movie.
Please tell us more about your vision, source of inspiration.
No, I can't.
Instead, we gave them a serial-numbered limited edition invitation for their descendants. Finally, to be sure that no one will see it before 2115, we locked the only copy of the film in a safe box specially designed and engineered to automatically open in 100 years. Without showing a single image of the actual film, we got the world's attention.
I hope you enjoy my film that's 100 years in the making. It's to be a work of art that is enjoyed in 100 years.
You will soon be connected to a random Swede somewhere in Sweden.
Hello, Sweden speaking.
Ja, hallå?
I know a club. You'll love it.
It's morning here.
Yeah, I know a lot about hunting, fishing and moonshining.
Listen to this!
1, 2, 3. That's how we do it. It's easy.
Bye-bye. Thank you for calling Sweden.
This was an excellent campaign because I just wonder how they were actually selling a number for a country to the tourism department. And incidentally, the Prime Minister also was in on it. So if you get onto YouTube and you Google this particular campaign, you'll actually see videos of the Prime Minister answering a few calls also. So imagine you calling that number and the Prime Minister of Sweden picking up the phone and having a conversation with you. It's just absolutely brilliant. So to kind of sum up, we just need to be brave, we need to be relevant, we need to be relatable, we need to be real, we need to be smart, and lastly, we need to be brave. I think in all the campaigns which I showed right now, these values are imbibed in all of them. So I think if you do this, I'm sure you'll actually have a good piece of content, viral as such, on your hands, so thanks a lot.
All right, so...
Yes.
India, all other countries were there. Did you
Well,
know
no, there was India there. I think.
it wasn't colored though, so
No, it was
they probably
colored.
thought we
It
would
was
manage
colored.
to get a copy before everyone else.
No,
got
no.
it in India.
I think the only ones which were not colored was Yemen.
Okay.
India.
India wasn't colored.
India was colored.
We probably have a copy there already.
Possibly, yeah.
Great. So we'll just jump right into this. Daniel, if we could start with you. We've talked a lot, and at least Carlton spoke a lot about how did the agency present this? What did that pitch sound like? But if you could turn it around a little bit, how do you think clients should brief agencies now in this whole different or not so different digital landscape?
Sure. So I think when it comes to briefing, an agency and a client to be truly successful need to have a partnership. And I think the client needs to understand what the agency's strengths are when creating that brief. So as to not be telling the agency what to do first and foremost. So a lot of the time we will get a brief that pretty much puts us in a box and says, we want this, 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 and this, and you just go and execute it. That's not the way to create the brief. So as an agency, our strengths lie in the fact that we are sort of at the forefront of the creative, the technology, the data.
Pretty simplistic in nature. I think most often clients are part of the ideation process, but I think things are evolving now. I think the clients need to be part of the ideation process, because while the ideation is taking place, it's imperative that they are part of it, because then they are vested in that idea too. So we need to evolve the briefing process as well as the ideation process to come up with the best solution for the brand.
I'm just picking up. Guys, just keep tweeting in these questions because we're going to try and answer as many of them as possible. Should storytelling be the priority for brands and agencies to be more effective?
Well, storytelling is actually part of the solution which you come. So I think it's, I think the solution and the idea is most important, and how you present the idea is a form of storytelling also.
Yeah, I think with the amount of competition and noise in the market, without the ability to tell a good story, and these days the stories need to also be able to really quickly and efficiently hook people in, because attention span is dropping. Without it, I think it's very difficult to be effective. I think just mass acquisition of media and spending power is not the ultimate weapon anymore. I think just by having more money than your competitor, you will not necessarily get a better share of voice and more engagement if your story is not as strong, not as engaging, not as shareable. So yes, I think it absolutely does.
And I'd absolutely echo that. I think you both showed some really lovely examples of great ideas and great storytelling, and a byproduct of that is the engagement and the social conversation. So that's why it's even more frustrating to get those briefs that start with the byproduct and fail to take into account the importance of the content and the story, because great things will come on the back of that once that's at the heart of it. And we did some research last year with JWT across Asia, looking at how much stronger your engagement is if you spend more time with the campaign, if you're asked to do something, upload something, cook a recipe, share it with your friends, as opposed to just watch great content. And we find that actually people's engagement level is exactly the same, whether they have to really go to these lengths on behalf of the brand, or whether they just have to watch great content and then respond to it. They come out with exactly the same levels of engagement across most markets that we studied in Asia. So coming back to that really strong idea and then thinking through how you apply it is still the fundamental tenet of what we've all been doing throughout most of our careers, and it's still true in this environment. So hopefully that can chip away a little bit of the fear we have.
Oh, that's such a great point, because I think even for us here, we're still in this mode of thinking that, you've got to buy the pack, you've got to take a selfie with your mom with the pack, then you've got to make sure that you tag 100 friends. And it's interesting that you say that, you don't always need to jump through so many hoops to actually get that kind of engagement.
And sometimes that's the right approach.
Of
But
course.
again, like with the brief around give us a viral or give us an app or give us an engagement campaign should not be the brief. And it, you know, again, it comes back to what the business goals are. It comes back to what the strategy is. And sometimes take the selfie with your mum, cook the recipe, share it with your friends, tag them all. Sometimes that's the right way to get to the outcome, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. And I think we, as we navigate through this world as well, we need to be very cautious of trying to take what's worked for another brand and just apply it as a template to our business. Because we haven't done that in other elements of our marketing strategy through the years, so we shouldn't try and do that in digital. We should learn, and we should be informed, and we should be able to then engage in a great debate with Carlton and Daniel and their teams about how this can be most effective, but we can't just apply an identical approach the same way we wouldn't have done with TV, with print, with radio.
Great. Sorry, so in throughout the whole day, we've had a lot of people say, Charu, that, we've got young people at executive levels or at, marketing manager levels. And then the difficulty sometimes is to sell up, and say, okay, my CEO doesn't agree with this, or my CEO doesn't see the point of point of the app or point of going social or whatever it is. But really, digital doesn't just belong to the marketing department, does it? And if you really have how important, in your opinion, is the CEO to the actual, to the actual energy and the drive that digital would get across a company and across markets?
Yeah, so I'm just going to connect your question to the earlier debates we were going through just now. Sure. And I think there were some very, very powerful videos I saw out there. I wish we had made some of them kind of videos, right? The really powerful content and storytelling. But I think there are there's firstly two kinds of agencies. And I think when you go out there and look for one, you should be very clear what kind of agency do you want for what kind of role for them to play. There are agencies which are very good at creating content, and therefore, if you are looking for just content as a piece, then that's the right agency to go to, right? But if you are looking at really transforming your business or your process or addressing a core problem that your business is dealing with today, then it's a very different kind of a partner that you're looking for, which is where I would like to differentiate between, let's say, an agency and a partner. So you need to look out for a partner who can really discuss and identify a little bit more sharply as to what your problem is, and then take that and make a quantum leap to say, if this is the problem, this is how you can actually probably solve it, not for today, but what would your brand look like in its journey 3 years from now? And work it backwards to say, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and this is how you're going to evolve. That's a very different kind of journey to talking to an agency which creates a lot of content for storytelling. And that requires like almost on a very, very quick succession and periodic basis, right? So in the context of that, how important is a CEO? For the second, which is to create a lot of relevant content periodically, the CEO's role does not have to be brought into it. But if you really want to talk to a partner about how do I really address a big problem that I'm facing in my business, the CEO is a very important game changer, right? Because that vision of addressing that problem, of addressing how do you transform a business from where it was in the past to where it could be in the future, is a call which will require several departments within the organization to collaborate. Right? So yes, it isn't just about the CEO. There has to be a CTO present these days. So a lot of our conversations are with CTOs and CEOs and the board. The board has to also decide, look, we've been running the business in a certain way, and now it needs to go forward a little differently on different trajectory. So the CEO is a big pivot in getting these stakeholders within the organization to collaborate and make that change happen.
Great.
And I think if we think about service-based businesses as well, I mean, their approach from the outset has been quite different because digital's been so inherent to the service delivery. So it hasn't necessarily been initiated by the marketing team. It may have been initiated in another part of the organization, but then been brought to life through partnership with the marketing team. But if you want to see big change, it has to be on the CEO agenda. And whether that's digital or any other aspect of your organization, it has to be something that's driven by the CEO. So for many organizations, digital's come into the business through the marketing department, but it's not necessarily where it should stop.
Absolutely. In fact, we've just done something for Abbott Pharma, which has really gone to another level where they're looking at how can we do the learning and development process very, very differently using technology to the point of contact with the end customer, which is the doctor fraternity, right? So we've established a kind of platform for the L&D, for their agents, for their pharmacists, and for the entire ecosystem to understand the products they come up with, understand how they can solve problems for doctors and for patients, and that's the route they are taking as well, in addition to, of course, because the pharmaceutical is a category where you can't advertise. So they're taking a very, let's impart knowledge kind of a route. And some of this is coming from the HR department. It's not necessarily coming from the CEO or the CTO. The CTO then comes into the conversation to say, yes, how can we use technology to really drill this down to the entire organization?
Sure.
Right? And so just coming back to the challenge of the kind of briefs people are getting. So, you know, we also have a certain data science we apply. And if some clients constantly come back with briefs like, I want a viral video, then we have voice recognition and those calls are deleted.
Danny and Carlton, there's a question out there for you. You want to pick it up? As you mentioned, a lot of time in Sri Lanka when the client briefed the agency. Client requests a Facebook page or a website or an app without actually doing any of the pre-work done. Do you want to take that question? Or what is the question?
Yeah, so
we get back to the client.
It's a good question. It's not a new question. I don't think it's specific to Sri Lanka. This is something I've experienced in many markets, including Australia, when digital was still new to the brand marketing and the organization, these questions will come up and people use triggers that they understand. So they'll say, I need an app, because they understand that there's apps going around, but they haven't done the pre-work. So the best way to address this is, and I think there was another question on here earlier that also taps into this, there's a need for a partnership between an agency and their client, right? And this is an opportunity to build that partnership by the agency investing back in and saying, here is the reasoning why we need to go a lot deeper than just a website or just an app or just a Facebook page. It may well be that those assets are necessary. So the solution is not saying, no, that's not what you need. The solution is saying, okay, here are 2 steps back, and this is the process that we're going to go through in order to develop the right strategy and the right tactics for these potential channels. So it's the agency potentially having to step back a little bit and do a little bit of additional education work, and I know that's sometimes painful for us to do, but that is basically the client asking for a little bit more education, a little bit more justification as to why do we need to think about this a little bit differently. And I think that is the education opportunity, and it comes with time. The more you work together, so when you do this once, and I say this from experience, when a client asks this question once and you go through the process properly, that same question never comes back from that client. So if the education and the partnership process works, the next time you get a brief as an agency, it won't be, I want a Facebook page. Because you've then kind of bridged that gap and educated, and that's been accepted and thought through. And if that relationship consistently improves and evolves, it won't happen again. If you're meeting with a new client, it could happen again, you start that same process. So that's typically how we would deal with that.
I would actually deal with it in a very simple manner, pretty much like what he said, but I would try and explain to the client why that approach is wrong. If he doesn't listen, I'll charge him shitloads of money to do that Facebook page.
I have a little twist out here, is that I think if a client is consistently having that conversation with you, whoever had that question, or agencies like us, I would worry if the only conversation a client has with me is give me a Facebook page, which means I probably haven't demonstrated the value I can bring to their business. So I don't think it's always the client's fault, right? I think the entire agency system should really bring its skill up to interact at a level where you can make a difference to their business. And if it's the first meeting and the client says, give me a Facebook page, great way to start saying, great idea, but why? Can I understand? And go back and demonstrate. What is it that we can bring to the table? So it's not always the client's fault. Bad briefs also come to bad agencies.
And I think if you demonstrate why a Facebook page is not the right answer with something else, and why that is the right answer, you'll probably end up getting the client to actually buy that.
Lakshman, are we done for time? Yep. 2 minutes, you're right. Do we want to pick up any of the other questions that are here?
Well, there's a lot of agency client bashing happening right now. I don't know if I was one of the catalysts for that. But essentially, I meant be brave on both sides, not only on the client side. I meant be brave as far as the agencies also go. You need to actually back your ideas with substantial evidence that it can do well. And if they still don't buy into the ideas, I've been reading a lot of the questions which have been coming in saying that we are being brave, but the clients don't have the purse strings or whatever it is, and all that jazz. But so to give you an example of our agency, when we started off about 16 years back, we were actually going to clients and telling them that this is the way forward. This is what you should need, this is what you should be doing. They say we don't have the budgets for it. And I tell them that the returns on investment in this particular one is far greater than any other medium you would put it on. And they still do not actually go ahead and say that, yes, we want to back that idea. So I tell them I will invest in this idea. But if I get the success that I'm stating based on those parameters, you will pay me a premium for it. And most of the times they actually go ahead and do that. So you've got to grow a pair, okay? And take it forward and say that I am backing my reputation on this idea and I'm moving it forward. And in turn, I'm gaining the client's confidence also to accept these ideas in the future, which will come in. These path-breaking ideas which will come in the future. So I think it's on both sides. You've got to actually give and take.
I agree. Just on a final question, there was one that popped up here. Should agencies hire professional storytellers? Oh God, I thought that's what we did, right? But that
what is
takes
a professional
you
storyteller?
Yeah, what
I
is a
don't know,
professional?
but still. But my point is, to everything that we've seen, you know, to a lot of the examples that you've showed us, now it's a coming together of different mediums, you know, like in the billboard example, it's outdoor, it's this, it's that, it's something else. But right now we need storytellers who are able, I think, to tell different parts of the story in the right type of mediums. And what do you think, Zoe, in terms of actually identifying, I mean, one of the biggest mistakes we're making is we're doing, say, one TV film, and then we're taking edits of that almost right across the board. And that doesn't work, does it?
No, it absolutely doesn't work. And you know, for those of you who are here this morning, I shared one of the examples I shared was a ponds campaign in the Philippines, which was 3 pieces of 6-minute content. Content that was developed specifically for YouTube as a channel, and yes, the idea was there to begin with before the channel was selected. But there are very different freedoms and very different opportunities available to us on different channels, but we need to understand how we work with them, how we work with the limitations of them. So it might be Facebook silent movies, it might be Snapchat lenses when they arrive in APAC, it might be, you know, short format videos, longer format videos. We need to understand what the opportunity is within that creative medium and work out how we can best tell our story with it. And some of them simply won't be right for us. They won't be right for us as a brand, and they won't be right for us from an idea perspective. But what we can't do is just try and port the same content from one platform to the other, because it's easy and it's lazy. And our consumers, our customers see straight through it, and they don't engage with it.
Yeah, exactly. Lakshman, are you standing there all strict?
There's
Right,
more
then we're
pressure,
done.
more pressure.
Okay, thank you so much. Bear with us, few more minutes to, sorry, you want to ask one more question?
No, we're good if you're good. Is there anything else anybody wants to say?
Sorry,
No?
sorry about it. I hate
A lot of
to
pressure from you with your little placards.
I hate to stop, you know, forcefully this great conversation. I wish we have, you know, time to chat more. Of course, we can, once we move out, you know, we can continue that chat over a couple of things. Please bear with me. Few more formalities I need to conclude. before I invite you for the most important event of the day. May I invite Mihirani Dissanayake from TNS, Country Manager, Head of Sri Lanka. There is a raffle draw once again. This time is one trip to Disneyland. The second one is 2 nights at Hugh Hefner's mansion. Mihirani, hi. Say, you support train, so
Shall I read it out?
Sure.
You might have to help me. Sujiwa Bandara Ediwira from Millennium Information Technologies.
Sujiwa Bandara Ediwira, winner of trip to Disneyland. You heard that, didn't you? Sorry, that you are giving away something, yeah. So the winner gets a workshop, free workshop on Connected Life from TNS, apart from the trip to Disneyland. Congratulations. The next is
See your slim.
Sanat. Sanat Siranayake. Sanat, are you here? So he missed the opportunity to spend 2 nights at Hugh Hefner's mansion. So. Janaka Hinkanda, Senior Project Manager, Digital Banking, NTB. Janaka. Okay, congratulations. So that's another pleasant task I had to conclude. And thanks, Mihirani. Thanks, Sai. Just we'll spend 1 hour and 48.5 seconds paying attention to our sponsors.
Lead sponsor.
As we always work with integrity, innovation, and excellence, we will forever continue our legacy, because innovation is power.
Co-sponsors.
Today, tomorrow, and into the future. Sampath Bank, we present your future.
Singamega, big experience.
Singamega, the big experience.
eFutures, we don't just build a mobile app, we build a business.
Research partner.
Connected Life from TNS.
Corporate communication partner.
Storyline, connecting the dots.
PR partner. EdFactors PR. Endorsed by
before I thank this wonderful panel of digital experts, let me make few concluding remarks. When we started designing this summit, okay, we consulted many people, including all the speakers, and all these speakers and panelists and session judges work like a team. And so this is not one single person's effort. There are a lot of emails went up and down. We discussed the presentation several times. We had Skype calls. So it's a collaborative effort. So I believe that is one reason of our success, that it is not one person who is doing it. When we embark upon designing a project, we seek the advice and association and collaboration of many people. Now, what was the intention we had in the morning? Okay, rather, what was the intention of creating this summit? It is not to impart any skills. So because our projects, our conferences are not skill development projects. All what you would like to do is broaden your horizon, open your mind, challenge your beliefs, and inculcate and induce that courage that you go out to the market, go back to enterprises, and make a difference. So that's all what we would like to achieve. And I do not know what are the specific expectations you had when you walked in this morning. I hope and I trust, I believe we were able to fulfill your expectations. So first, let me thank all our partners, all our sponsors making this happen, and a very big thank you for all of you. Sitting through 9 hours of content is not easy. Okay. And in most of the conferences, people have lunch and they go home or they go and watch a movie. And it rarely happens at our conferences. People stay throughout the event. Of course, some people have, other obligations after 5 o'clock, so that's understood. So I think that's a testimony that our content we create together with our great panelists is appreciated by, corporate citizens, our fellow corporate executives in this country. Another very interesting thing is that there are a lot of repeat, attendees in our sessions. And at this time we had a tremendous problem to accommodate, 400 people in this small room. The problem is, we are Sri Lankans, and we, want to register only the last moment. And people who call me at the last moment are the people who are my closest friends. They say, okay, we can call Lakshman and get it done. So I can't say no to them. And they are also our great clients, and we have partnerships, we have business relationships, personal relationships. So it is eventually we were able to accommodate everybody who requested until this last evening. Final request came around 7 o'clock last evening. Some people, called this morning, and unfortunately by that time we had to refuse. So, but we are quite happy that we were able to accommodate everybody. So as we said, our intention was to broaden your horizon, broaden your intellect, challenge the traditional thinking. Now, one might say, one question I saw, hey, that these are expensive stuff done in developed markets. They would have been busted up. So we are not asking to replicate that. All what we want is these are the possible things. What is clever is to what extent can we adopt, such approach. So why we are bringing these cases from developed market is to inspire people. Okay, not to discourage, but to inspire that people can do things differently. And unless we do things differently, you're not going to be winner in the digital space. So with that, I would like to thank you once again and conclude, LMR, yes, LMR, that was my first job 35 years ago. LBR and LBO Brand Summit 2016, building winning brands in digital age and strategy innovation. And we will meet again next year in Brand Summit around the same time of the year. Goodbye And thank you so much. And finally, let's thank the wonderful, digital strategists who join us in the most interesting and the final, most entertaining. It doesn't mean that other sessions were less important, but this is sexy stuff, presenting some entertaining, entertaining, but at the same time inspiring examples. And thank you so much, Daniel. It is wonderful. Daniel and I have worked very hard last few weeks, and I was, ruthlessly, editing, making certain comments. Thanks so much, Carlton. Okay, you're a frequent traveler to Sri Lanka, so welcome once again. Charu, it's a pleasure to have you with us after 8 years. So hopefully you will we'll meet again. And so, of course, this is the second time you're on our stage. And thank you so much for your kindness and your generosity of all of you to sacrifice, day's work, 2 days' work, and sharing all your expertise with us. And Alina, thank you. And it's wonderful to have you on stage once again, and it's great. And again, I thank you for your generosity, spending time on this panel. And once again, thanks to all the speakers who spent time. Some have to catch flights, so they went early, and Charu has to leave in half an hour, I think. So Carlton has to leave a little later, I believe, tomorrow. Okay, so Ramesh has to leave in few. So all these people are busy people, and once again, I do not have enough words to thank and appreciate, their generosity joining us. So I thank all the speakers, finally, and all the session chairs and the panelists. And so this concludes, but before we conclude, please put your hands together and thank our brilliant panel. Please join us at the reception. Main thing. Okay, drinks are served outside the foyer, and you can catch again Daniel, Carlton, Zoe, and Alina for another chat. Thank you so much.
Lead sponsor.
We are the ones who transform a challenge into endless opportunities. We are the ones who let our work define us with our goal to be the best. We are the ones who never stop. And we are the ones who change the face of technology.